We have some big news right now. Greenland is snubbing Donald Trump and has decided to start courting a closer relationship than none other than China. According to Chinese state media, Greenland's foreign minister has said that China is very important to Greenland and that Greenland is eager to strengthen its cooperation with China. These comments were made in late March but are now just being reported today. That is a significant development, if true. And the reason is because Greenland has been long sought after by Donald Trump and the Trump administration for national security reasons. And Trump has even floated the idea of either giving $10,000 checks to Greenlanders or even using military force to take Greenland. But now it looks like Greenland is courting a different suitor, that of the Chinese government, to further its relationships with China. Now, this is not to say that China is going to take over Greenland, but rather Greenland is looking for support from the Chinese government as it works to rebut the Trump administration. I'll have a full breakdown on my Substack, link to my bio, so subscribe for free and follow along for all the news.
Donald Trump is about to take his biggest loss in his trade war as Greenland is looking to expand its relationship with China. Now, this story comes to us from Newsweek, who quotes Greenland's Minister for Independence and Foreign Affairs, who says this, quote, "China is very important to us, and we are eager to strengthen our cooperation. I've been to Beijing and several other cities. I was very impressed during my visit to China. I was interested in how we could build good cooperation with Chinese enterprises and authorities," unquote. Yes, Donald Trump's trade war and his insistence that Greenland would be part of the United States, whether willingly or unwillingly, has pushed Greenland into the arms of China. China, who the country that Donald Trump is trying to hurt the most, is gaining the most from his trade war. And Greenland has been his crown jewel. Greenland has been the apple of Donald Trump's eye since he became president back in 2017, and now he is on the brink of losing it. While they won't become part of China, certainly as their cooperation grows with China, dependence on the U.S. becomes smaller and smaller. Good job.
Okay, let's see. Oil was $55 in 2019, and the majority of us were working. Good hands will stay working. That, 2019, that's the year we lost 35% of our drilling rigs. Yeah. I guess the majority, yes, technically, I guess the majority was still working. Yeah. We didn't fire more than half the people in the industry. So yes, you're right about that. With the recent fall in oil prices, I see a ton of people jumping on social media to talk about the industry and what's going to happen and what's not going to happen and all this stuff. And a lot of people use their personal past experience, and people like me obviously use historical data to try to determine what's going to happen next. But you can't just take what happened historically and say, okay, that's going to happen again, because that's not really how it works. You look at historical data and you see how companies responded to downturns each time there was a downturn, and because there's a different iteration of their response, right? They don't respond the exact same way every time. They try to improve that to prevent losses. And one of the ways that U.S. producers have failed in the past to respond to downturns, thereby making those downturns worse, is by not scaling back early enough. And a lot of that has to do with how much debt that they were carrying during those times, but things are much different now. They're not carrying near as much debt as they were during previous downturns. And what that means when they're not carrying near as much debt is they can scale back much quicker. And that's why we're already seeing rig counts fall drastically. Another thing people fail to recognize is what inflation does to businesses. Everyone understands what inflation does to them personally. It has that exact same effect on businesses too. If $50 doesn't get you as far as it used to, it also doesn't get an oil company as far as it used to as well. There was a time when, break-even price for oil in the United States was $20. There was a time it was $30. There was a time it was $40. There was a time it was $50, $60. It's not there anymore. We have had inflation over time, and the break-even price for oil is no longer $50 or $55. That's just not a thing. So what I have been predicting is going to happen is oil companies are going to react much quicker and much swifter to scale back their expenses, scale back drilling, to try to prevent the downturn in the commodities market as being as deep as it might turn out to be. They're trying to call it a soft landing, I guess. If they accomplish that, then the downturn won't be as bad as it would be otherwise. but it'll certainly mean job losses. It'll certainly mean declines in production. No matter what happens, drill baby drill is not a thing. Just like I've told everyone, it's not a thing since the first time it was ever said. But the thing I would disagree most with Justin here is that good hands will stay working. I've been in this industry a very long time, and good hands staying working is something that should happen, but it's definitely something that doesn't happen as much as it should. Good hands are usually the first ones to go because they're the highest paid. Of course, there's scenarios where that's not a thing, but in my overall experience over 33 years in this industry, I've seen more good hands get let go than bad during downturns. Yeah. Thanks.
Everyone needs the American consumer. That's what Caroline Levitt just said today, the White House press secretary. China has to make the first move and come to us because we've got what they want, the American consumer. Everyone needs the American consumer. I find this remarkable because she's not wrong, but just 4 days ago, she was having to answer questions on the very same podium about why American consumer confidence is so low, to which her answer was, you've got to trust Donald Trump, he knows what he's doing, confidence should be higher. Come on, guys. Here's the thing, because the leverage that America has in these trade games is partially down to the fact that America's got a high consuming market, that everything that Donald Trump is doing at the moment is massively undermining that. So that leverage that he's using so hard, you need our base, our market, our population to be buying your stuff, is withering on the vine because the American population are being completely defanged in their ability to be buying anything. It's not just the businesses that are having to push up prices because of tariffs on the American population, meaning that the American population can buy less. It's also that the American population is so spooked that they're holding on to their money, as they should at the moment, and that's what you're seeing in the consumer confidence, and that's what's probably spooking the White House a lot. But right across the board, and you think about, for example, all of the federal workers that have been laid off, the threats to Social Security, the threats to Medicare and Medicaid, all of these things mean that people are just going to have less money, less resource to go out and spend. Similarly with the stock market, Donald Trump is hurting the stock market big time, and US Treasuries at the same time, remarkably. And I've seen lots of people report that this has really, really hurt their 401ks, which is American parlance for basically your savings for later in life, your pension. So this notion that the world needs America to buy their stuff is, they don't need, it's advantageous to be able to sell into the American market. But if you're going to be blocked anyway on the quid pro quo that your population, however rich or impoverished, has to buy back the same amount, which is unfeasible in a lot of circumstances, then people are just going to adjust to cut out the American consumer from their calculations because there is uncertainty there. You can't plan on it. And at the same time, the power of Americans to buy is dropping absolutely rapidly right now. So it comes back to the same thing where we spend so many videos here playing guessing games around Donald Trump's plans with his tariffs, because it's chasing a headless chicken. As soon as they think they've got a narrative that explains what he's doing with some kind of genius for one reason or another reason, you sort of catch up with that one, undermine it, and then they're off putting up another explanation. But at the end of the day, this is the newest idea that the world needs America to buy their stuff, but the power of the American consumer, the American purchasing power is dropping a lot. And for those Americans who cannot stand Donald Trump, know the risk to their country, that it opens a very clear mechanism for what they need to do, which is just stop spending. And the more that they stop spending, listen, just 1 in 100 people dropping what they consume by half is a 0.5% drop overall. And if Americans build all of that local communities, the self-sustainability, and go for a thrift model, that really helps pull the rug under from what everything Donald Trump is trying to do.
When you see MAGA in the comments coming back with the same comebacks they've said over and over and over, no matter what changes in front of them, I want you to look at it like this. When you're a kid, what your parents say is basically like God saying it, right? Like my dad said, Santa's true. Santa's real. And so you go out in the world believing that. And then when you bump up against a kid that goes, yeah, right, Santa's not real, you freaking weirdo, you're too old to believe that. It is very shocking to the system because my dad wouldn't lie to me. And then he may bring it up to the dad, and if the dad still wants him to believe that, he's like, well, of course he's real. Why would I lie to you about that? Don't you believe me? What's wrong with you? So then that kid will go back out, and he is going to fight to the death to say that Santa's real because he believes in his dad, and he's not going to be disloyal to his dad. Plus, he gets the bonus of believing in Santa. So he will attack that kid. He will make fun of him and say, you don't know what you're talking about. Your dad's stupid. That kind of thing. And then it's the same way as they get older. Like, because in a cult setting, so when you're raised in a cult, you're not just in a cult, you're also in a family cult. And then you go into a marriage cult. It's just a generational cult thing. And almost no one gets out of that. If you were born in a cult, your brain is developed as a cult brain. So your family operates that way, and then you go into a marriage that is the same way, where you don't have a voice. And so so let's say Trump is the dad, so Trump's the cult, and these are his children. They are going to believe what he says, no matter what we say, because my dad said. It's very young like that, because they weren't ever allowed to individuate and have their own thoughts or their own opinions. And if they did, they were kept to themselves. But you feel guilty for not believing your parents. You feel guilty for going against them. You feel a deep wound or a pain if they ever look disappointed in you or anything. If you question anything they say, they look devastated and you just feel like you want to die. And if you try and challenge them, you remember the violence. You remember the threats. You remember all kinds of awful things, and that you could get kicked out of the family, so you keep it to yourself. And either you just keep moving along into cults, or maybe you meet someone, a cousin, an aunt, an uncle, someone that's very kind to you, that has treated you with respect, who isn't in the cult dynamic. And you trust them enough to share your feelings. And they're great with you. They don't go, well, your dad's an idiot. They say, well, what do you think about that? How does that make you feel? Do you have any other thoughts on that? What have you heard other people say? And it allows you to open up and not feel like you're being attacked for going against the father. Because your brain belongs to the cult. There's no choices involved. Agency is gone. So you have to either meet someone in the outside world that is so patient and kind with you that can allow you to evolve through this process and not feel like you're going to die, because it does feel like a death. You feel threatened. I mean, there's no way to explain how terrifying it is. Like, it's top secret. You whisper this shit and you write it in notes. You meet somewhere else. And the other option is to have it so evident that the dad is lying that you have no choice. So let's say you wait up all night and Santa doesn't show up, and now there's no presents, and everybody you've ever met's like, dude, like everybody. And to where you have no choice but to deal with the reality that he's not real, or whatever the thing is the dad is saying. Like a dad saying, oh, we've got all this money and you'll all be okay. And then one day you look in the bank accounts and it's all gone. those are the moments where, well, shit, dad was lying, because then your self-survival will kick in and you will individuate, and it will be a very scary, quick one. And then you have to sort yourself out afterwards. But those are really the two ways, because people go, well, why do things have to impact them so much? It's like, because they don't have their own brain. And their brain belongs to the dad, and the loyalty and the love belongs to the dad. And anytime they're disloyal, it makes them feel sick and scared. That's what it's like being in a cult. You don't have to understand it, but that's the way it is. And it would really help if people would understand it, so they would know how to engage these people and understand why their comments are like, nah, Trump said. No, Trump's going to fix everything. No, see, Trump's helping us. Don't you see? That sounds just like my dad's helping. You guys don't get it, but my dad's a good guy. Do you see? Do you see? And so if you attack kids about their dad, it's like, I can talk shit about my dad, but you can't talk shit about my dad. It's exactly like that. So talking shit about them to the cult members doesn't work. It just makes them scared, and it makes them cling more to the dad, because they don't know what else to do. They don't have their own agency at this point.
Good night.
The media pushing Katy Perry and these other millionaire chicks paying way too much money and causing way too much pollution to technically go to space for all of 2 seconds is just yet another example of the Capitol eating the cake in your face, okay? While we're down here going, why the hell are they talking about exporting citizens for the heinous crimes of not worshiping their false prophet god? They were trying to distract you with the super elite throwing away their money at tourism of technically hitting the atmosphere, coming back and announcing how they feel connected to love now. I'm so connected to love now that I've seen the atmosphere. You guys have no idea. That's where we are, okay? Okay? The Capitol people are doing that thing where they chew with their mouth opens in their face and they talk to, you know, that thing that happens in corporate? You know how people are talking about how corporate is just Mayo supremacy? That's all it is, and I can tell you that because I worked in it, okay? That thing where when a boss thinks lowly of you, they eat their lunch in front of you, right? They were like, oh, so sorry, I'm just going to have this in front of you. I think I told you I had some bitch at one of the solar companies. She was like, I'm going to eat these special cookies in front of you guys, and you can't ask me for one because you just wouldn't understand. You don't respect the history behind these cookies, so I'm going to eat them in this meeting and spit crumbs in your face. And she was a chick that was put in that place because she used to hook up with the boss. No experience, no degrees. She was a secretary that got promoted to VP of operations and would sit there and eat in your face during a meeting and spit crumbs at you and everything so that you knew you were beneath her. All right? That shit, that's what they're doing right now. Katy Perry is spitting cake crumbs in your face. I feel so connected to love. And they want y'all to be like, yes, give me those crumbs. Give me those saliva-soaked crumbs. I love it. Yummy, 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 yummy. That's what they want. That's what they want you to do. All right? And the ones that are sitting around going, we're so cooked, you're eating the crumbs. All right? The ones going, who's going to save us? You're eating the crumbs. Okay? The ones going, it has to be the military. You're eating the crumbs. All right? The ones that are still thinking that anyone on Team Blue, I mean, yes, we've got AOC and Bernie, and those crowds are massive, and it's important that people are gathering and the numbers are seen. But every time I see Jeffrey's smug face, like right now, he's sitting up here going, Congress would never allow the stench to export U.S. citizens. Shut the fuck up, Jeffries. Yes, you would. Yes, you would. You're wasting time. You're buying them time. When it happens, you are going to stand up there and say never, and then exactly 24 hours later, you're going to vote to accept it, and you're going to applaud when it gets signed, and you're going to go, decorum, we had no choice. They had the numbers. What did you want us to do? Stand for something? Why would we do that? Of course we're ready to export people that aren't willing to wear the pin. Of course we're at the part where America's exporting people who won't wear the gold mark of the beast. This is the future. Look, like I said in the other video, they told you that this was a coup. Like they told you. The Heritage people, they said it. They said this is a coup. The people in the seats said this is a coup. And you guys sat there and said, is it? Is it a coup? Let's talk about it on the news at 6 o'clock. Did they mean what they really just said? Did they mean that? I don't think they meant it. They were just being cute. Okay? That's what's wrong with y'all. The self-gaslighting is what's wrong with y'all. I need you to shake out of that. I need you to shake out of that self-gaslighting of, they would never. Yes, they will. It's never happened, but yes, it did. It happened in the 40s, just in a different country. They're following the exact same mother-loving blueprint, and because so many of y'all are afraid to even crack open a book, you don't want to see that. You just want to go, it'll never, that would never, this is America. Okay, obviously you haven't been watching little blondies running around going, excuse me, we're not raised. It's just a known fact that this country is supposed to be for white steeple people. That's what it was founded on, and now you're telling us that's not the truth? You're telling us this wasn't founded on being a steeple people country? Like, darling, that was literally the main thing. That was, okay, the white part and the men part we can discuss, but the steeple people part was the one thing they were crystal mother-loving clear about not wanting. But because you can't read anything in cursive because you didn't learn how, you're sitting here telling us that for the last couple of 100 years, it's all of a sudden supposed to be white steeple people country, because that's what the deity said. Like there weren't people already living here thousands of years before you and your diseases showed up. Great. This is supposed to be our land. Like, oh my God. All right. I told y'all to rein them in. You didn't want to rein them in. You wanted to just say, they're not like us. We're different from them. Okay, well, they have the reins. So, keep differentiating yourself from them while they're handing out gold pins and saying, choose this or your head. Wear his head or lose your head. Which one will it be? We're already there. We're there. We're already there.
Good evening. Welcome to your nightly news rundown for April 14th. It's a Monday. Breaking another promise where he said pharmaceutical costs would come down, the Trump administration has announced that they are going to impose certain tariffs on certain pharmaceuticals, which they haven't disclosed, and they haven't disclosed the amount, all due to national security implications. What this means, they're not clear on, and they're not making it clear to the public. Mark Zuckerberg and Meta went on trial before Judge Boasberg, the same Judge Boasberg who's conflicted with the Trump administration over the last few months. Now, this is a full antitrust suit, which, if Meta loses, will result in them having to sell off Instagram and WhatsApp from the whole metaverse. A new lawsuit filed in federal court in Washington, D.C. claims that the Trump administration is violating federal law because they took an online database overseen by the Office of Management and Budget and took it offline without warning and without cause. The lawsuit is correct. This website is mandated by law to show where funds were appropriated and how they're being spent. It was set up for transparency, and the lawsuit reads that absent this transparency, the president and OMB may abuse their authority over apportionment of federal funds without public or congressional scrutiny or accountability, which we've already seen the White House attempt to use federal funds in ways that they weren't apportioned out by Congress. Donald Trump directed the FCC to open an investigation into CBS and 60 Minutes and to revoke their license, all because they've been running stories that he deems are negative against him. In a post on Truth Social, he said almost every week 60 Minutes mentions the name Trump in a derogatory or defamatory way, but this weekend's broadcast tops them all. Now, this is just Donald Trump being petty, and we know that he can be petty, so it's no surprise. A Columbia University student, Mohsin Madawi, was arrested by federal agents today while he was in a naturalization interview at an immigration office in Vermont. Now, Mr. Madawi, a Palestinian student, a green card holder, was arrested by DHS agents at this interview. And while he was a leader in the pro-Palestinian protests last spring, this is just another target by the Trump administration to get rid of people who they see as others, who might harm their relationship with Israel, and Israel is pushing most of this for whatever reason. Moving to a different university, today Harvard rejected demands from the Trump administration to open up investigations, including investigations around protesting, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and said they had to do this or they would lose federal funding. Now, Harvard responded, no government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue. And for this, the Trump administration, again, being petty, froze $2.2 billion in federal funding that they had already agreed to and that had already been appropriated to Harvard. Continuing with the administration's illegal actions, despite a court order, the White House barred the Associated Press from entering an Oval Office event. Now, the judge was very clear that it was a violation of the First Amendment for the White House to do this. Once again, nothing will probably happen, but it's just another attack on the press, and at this point, it just seems like the judiciary is issuing orders and the Trump administration is violating them just to see what will happen. And so far, nothing's happened. A legal advocacy group today filed in the U.S. Court of International Trade a request to block Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs on foreign trading partners, arguing that the president overstepped his authority. Now, the lawsuit was filed by the nonpartisan Liberty Justice Center on behalf of 5 small U.S. businesses that import goods from countries targeted by the tariffs. Now, the business ranged from a New York wine and spirits importer to a Virginia-based educational kit and musical instrument company. Katy Perry and 5 other women launched to the edge of space today on a Blue Origin rocket and then successfully returned to Earth, making the first all-female spaceflight in more than 60 years. The space crew included Bezos' fiancée Lauren Sanchez, CBS host Gayle King, former NASA rocket scientist Aisha Bose, scientist Amanda Wynn, and film producer Carrie Ann Flynn. The Trump administration's trying to make bills more expensive if you're late. They asked a federal court to throw out a regulation capping credit card late fees at $8, saying it agreed with business and banking groups that the rule was illegal and they should be able to impose whatever late fee charge that they want. Now, some of these groups used to charge up to $75 for a late fee on a $5 bill. Now, this has been your nightly news rundown for April 14th. Once again, if you follow me, I really appreciate you. I appreciate you coming back every night after night. If you're new here, I hope I earned a follow tonight. Go ahead and like, share, and comment on this video. Let me know other stories that I might have missed or that you'd like more information on. Have a
First, I'm going to report on something that should at least put people's minds at ease a little bit. A lot of people are, of course, laughing about this, but Vance's wife is reporting that he is very lonely. And I can completely understand that, because I've said many times that while he is a slimy, sleazy opportunist, he is not a blatant sociopath. Which is why I am personally a lot less worried about him taking over once the moldy pumpkin goes the way of Beelzebub. Because the reason this guy is so horribly lonely is because he spends his entire day surrounded by people who want to deport his wife. And he has to just sit there and take it. While this guy is obviously a sleazy ideologue, he is nowhere near as bad as our current situation. Because lately there's been a massive controversy about how he recently said on a hot mic moment that he wanted the leader of El Salvador to build 5 more facilities where they purposefully hurt people and make people disappear, but he wants to put homegrown people there, including people who he says are deranged or sick. Meanwhile, may I remind you that recently in Minnesota, a Republican tried introducing a bill to make TDS a mental illness. Meanwhile, this guy says he wants to send deranged or sick people to a prison. I wonder how we would classify deranged people who should go there. But the hilarious thing is that he said that because he said he was talking about people who attack elderly ladies in the back of the head with a baseball bat and people who push people in the subway. So, you know, common criminals and stuff. People who are citizens. Somebody needs to remind him of something. The US government cannot forcibly remove citizens from the country for any reason. And you're advocating that we send people to a torture prison because they either don't like you or because they push someone in the subway? Someone needs a diaper change and a nap. And this is made infinitely more terrifying when this administration openly said they don't care about what the Supreme Court said in a unanimous decision. They are not going to bother bringing back Kilmar Garcia from El Salvador. But let's be honest, he's probably no longer with us. Also, the Republicans in Congress recently passed a vote to cut millions of dollars from Medicaid, and they cheered it on as the Democrats tried to all vote it down. So while we all have to wonder whether or not we're going to be rounded up and put onto trucks like they did in the 1930s, This guy is once again enriching himself and his friends and openly admitting to a crime that he manipulated the stock market in order to make the rich people richer, which negatively affected the global economy, but he doesn't care because he's a sociopath. Meanwhile, the people who wholeheartedly still support him and think he's doing a wonderful job think that they are safe from being sent away or made to disappear because of their whiteness. But not only do those people need to be reminded that while they call themselves patriots, they are no such thing, they also need to realize that by him openly testing this, it should remind you that while this was their original plan, this doesn't matter anymore. This has been We Told You So. As Alfred astutely put it, some men just want to watch the world burn. I've touched on this briefly in the past, but I still find it very ironic and kind of hilarious that while the Republicans for the longest time have claimed things like every Democrat is a pedophile or every Democrat is a communist, when the people in Dumpy's cabinet are literally wearing gold pins of his face, which is exactly what people did during Mao's reign. They are literally mimicking the actions of a communist leader.